everybody. Welcome to the Board Report. We bring authentic truth and real conversation to educate our viewers. I'm going to bring on John Karapi from TGI Now. He's going to join us today. Hi, John. How are you?
Good. How you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. So,
Right.
John, tell our viewers what the board report is, and can you give them an idea what the breakdown is on some of the key issues our viewers can expect from the board report?
Absolutely. So the board report was developed under the umbrella of the Indian River Connections, which is our umbrella of all our other podcasts, TGI Now, Binford Chronicles, and To the Point podcast. And so the board report came out of, the whole process of all these different boards in the community, school board, the county commissioners, city council, hospital district. There's so many different platforms that we wanted to get people informed locally in Indian River County. So we developed that board report, and we're bringing on people that are going to come in and contribute to certain topics that we will have. And this is one of the topics that we have coming up right now, the hospital district and able child. So I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say, and then I'll come back on after the panel.
Yeah, we have a great lineup today. We have Sheila Matthews, founder of Able Child. And Sheila, she's a dedicated advocate and professional. She has made significant contributions in the nonprofit sector and the real estate industry. Sheila, welcome. Welcome on the board report.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Able Child. Sheila, how did this become a passion of yours?
Well, I'm a mom. I have two sons. They're grown men. And when my son was 7, the school was pressuring me to put him on psychiatric drugs because he was really very outgoing, typical boy, started speaking early, and it became a nightmare for me, the whole challenge of navigating the school system. And I was preparing for a meeting with the team of the IEP team. And I know parents out there know exactly what I'm talking about, where you go in and you face all the teachers. And basically at that point, the night before, I met my co-founder, Patricia Weather. She was testifying before Congress, and God intervened and had me watch this C-SPAN. And I called Congress, I got her number, and she warned me that the label itself, ADHD, is not based in any science. I wasn't being told that. So we developed a partnership and we decided to create Able Child, and that was in 2001. And now we're in all sorts of informed consent is our mission, and we're in all sorts of topics regarding mental health.
Wow. So Able Child is about informed consent of parental rights to access information about their children and what these drugs are all about. Yeah. So how does this tie into the school shootings?
Really good question. Basically, I started to work on legislation in the state of Connecticut, and Sandy Hook happened, and I was helping a mom who was navigating not only the school system, but what happened to her son is the state took her son away because she refused to put him on psychiatric drugs. She needed help, and then they kind of coercion to sign him over to the state, and she couldn't get him out of state care. So she worked, and she lived in Sandy Hook. She invited me up because she thought that Adam Lanza was on these psychiatric drugs. And that was really when I started feeding the lawmakers up there with the data that was going around on the other mass shootings, mass killings. So that's where I started on these mass killings. And then I've worked on multiple school shootings. I like them, they're not really just school shootings. They're murder cases. They're mass murders. And so that's how I started in getting involved in gathering the information like the mental health records. So our organization, Able Child, ended up suing the state of Connecticut for Adam Lanza's mental health records. And then I've been working on it ever since.
So Sheila, who's diagnosing these students?
That's a really good question as well. And this is through the Association of the School Psychologists. And it's really not endorsed in any science. So a checklist will go home to, the parent will be called in, say, we think that your child has ADHD. The teacher fills out a checklist, the school psychologist, and even the mother, which I did. I didn't know that there was no science, that they were doing this checklist diagnosing. And so this is rampant in our schools. They're hiding it from parents, that there's no science behind it. So it's coming actually from the Association of School Psychology, and they get their data from the National Institute of Mental Health and a really big lobbying organization, NAMI, the National Alliance of the Mentally Ill, which is funded by the pharmaceutical industry.
Wow. It almost sounds like these students that they're diagnosing with ADHD are smart kids that they just need to be stimulated. I mean, if you've ever met a farmer, now these people are not the same kind of people that you would find anywhere else. They work hard all day, they work all day, they're outdoors, they're hands-on, they are physically going all the time. And it kind of sounds like ADHD kids that are being diagnosed with ADHD are the kids that just can't sit still for long periods of time, but they're still smart individuals.
Right. And Able Child's research, and the name of our organization is based on President Eisenhower's Able Child. And that's where grants started, and they were pushed out into the school system to help gifted and creative children. So these children, if you take an ADHD checklist and you take a gifted checklist, they're not, neither one are based in science, but the ADHD checklist has a great deal of pharmaceutical money behind it, and they copied the characteristics of the gifted child. So it's actually fraud. And,
wow.
Able Child's been doing this for over 20 years, and nobody has challenged us on the fraud aspect of it. These children, these gifted and talented children, their identities are being robbed by this checklist.
So what are the alternatives to work with schools and to get this psychiatric part of it out? Because schools shouldn't be filled with psychiatric situations. I mean, if a child needs to see a psychiatrist, they need to go outside of the school. It shouldn't be the school doing it. So what's the alternative to get this change?
Well, it's difficult because President Biden flooded the zone with mental health clinics that are going to be entering and have already entered the public school system at an alarming rate. So what parents can do is go to Able Child, and they can file. It's a letter really nicely written by Senator Orrin Hatch, and he's since passed away, but his legacy is this letter where parents can put it in their folders and avoid all these psychiatric classes and all the diagnosing, and really each year replace it. And it says, I do not want my child to be in value clarifications. A lot of this transgender issues are coming through there, but parents don't have the information. The school isn't saying you have the right to opt out. The school isn't saying you have a right to look at the curriculum. That's federal law. So, we're a small organization. We've been doing this for a long time, and we're the only ones that have the data that parents can use to combat this before it starts.
Yeah. Sheila, do you guys go up to sessions to write bills and try to get these bills? Do you have anything that's going on right now?
Excellent question. Right now, we are preparing for our event, and I know we'll talk about that further, but Able Child has passed federal legislation along with joining forces with other groups like Citizens Commission on Human Rights and Bobby Kennedy's group, the Children's Health Defense. And so we've proposed legislation in Tennessee. We've passed through the No Child Left Behind Act. There's actually a protection that protects parents from mandating that their children go on these psychiatric drugs in order to attend school. So we've passed that. Able Child's work extensively into the behavioral health oversight committees around the country. We've testified. We've done stories in Montana where foreign entities are restructuring the special education department. It's pretty deep, it's powerful. So to answer your question, we're spread a little thin, but we do plan on doing legislation in Tennessee and Florida. And we have a really good proposed bill in the state of Tennessee that we're hoping to push through.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for what you do. Now, Able Child has an event coming up in February called Shattering the Narrative. I have a little video that I just want to show on that for our viewers to see. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, I love that. And I hope that everybody got a good look at that to please join her event. Sheila, where do people go to find out more about your organization?
Okay, ablechild.org, ablechild.org. We have our breaking news stories on the front. Our invitation to shattering the narrative is right on there. The tickets are $200 for a VIP ticket, $100 general admission. There's going to be a beautiful dinner there, a lot of networking. And we named it Shattering the Narrative because, first of all, our last year, this is our second year. Our first year, we gave award to Stephen K. Bannon. We gave one to James O'Keefe and to Joe Hoft. And this year we're giving one to Jim Hoft, who runs the Gateway Pundit. And his website, you guys are all into this new technology and this new media. His website has had 1 billion views per page. And so we're giving him an award just because he is talking about what the mainstream media isn't talking about. So our organization, right on our website, you can click right on there and buy tickets. It's going to be a wonderful event. We're going to have a lot of news organizations. We have one international news station that is going to be our guest there. So we're excited, so we hope everybody comes. It's the only fundraiser we do. So it gives us the energy to do all the work we need to do.
Wow. Thank you, Sheila Matthews. We love your passion and dedication. Now, don't go anywhere. Please stick around for a short commercial break. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the board report. If you're just joining us, the board report, we bring authentic truth and real conversation to educate our viewers. Today, we're moving on to another subject, the Cleveland Clinic. It has been one of Indian River County's hot topics. Today, we're going to have that discussion. I would like to bring on John Karapi, CJ, Editor-in-Chief of the Spark Free Press. Come on board, gentlemen.
We're CJ.
Am I here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hold
Oh.
on.
Let me load out and load back in.
No.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see if I can bring you on board. Nope, can't bring you on.
You disappeared.
Let me load out and load in real quick.
All right, folks, hang on just a second and we will bring CJ on board. CJ is the editor-in-chief of the Spark Free Press. If you haven't heard of it, it's a great newspaper to read. You can go online, thesparkfreepress.com, and you can subscribe there. And we're just working out some clicks here.
He's there. You there, CJ?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there.
All right. Well, Go ahead and go. Even if we can't see you, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on board here. I don't know what's going on with the video, but thank you for all you guys do over here at the board report. And I just wanted to, we work a lot with Able Child over here, and we have been doing some reporting on the hospital district. If Sheila, if you'd like to explain what we're doing over there.
Sure. I ran for the hospital district seat number 5. People might get a little confused, but my legal name is Sheila Gallo. So I ran for the seat and I lost, but not by much. And I really felt compelled to go to the last meeting regarding the big debate about bailing out Cleveland Clinic. And CJ came with the Spark. He's been reporting on it. He's been on the cutting edge of really getting to the bottom of the controversy. And basically, it was announced that night that they're actually building a hospital in another city, I think, town, Palm Beach. And, it's really terrible that the conflicts of interest within the board and just the constant bootlicking that the board does to the Cleveland Clinic. And I'm very familiar with corruption. So I really did feel that it was important to go to the meeting, and I guess it's on hold right now for further evaluation.
Yeah, Sheila, when you went up to speak, they kind of shut your mic off. They didn't like what you were saying.
Yes, I'm very much used to that, Joanne, because I participate in the behavioral health oversight committees around the country, and I'm going to be actually showing a little clip of all those shutoffs at my events. And they don't want to hear what I have to say, which is that they're spending a tremendous amount of money without any accountability. And I'm really concerned also about the grants they're giving out to the mental health. They're now building sober houses. I mean, the mental health aspect of the government is really so filled with fraud. And they don't like when I point that out, especially some of these programs that they're funding in behavioral health for young children. There's no outcome measurement. So the way I was trying to explain to them one of their programs that they're funding in the pages in their report where they say, well, this is the outcome and we're getting excellent responses. It's basically asking kids, how do you feel about the session that we just had? That's not scientific evidence that the program's working. And it's depriving other children of really needed life skills and reading and writing. So mental health is just ripe with fraud. So they cut my mic off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the hospital taxing district has 4.5 million in services, is what I was reading, and then they are their partnerships are with Healthy Start and CCIRH. I'm not sure what CCIRH is. Can you expound on that?
Actually, I really haven't dived deep into the actual providers, but what I did is the report that they did release, I went on the outcome measurements, and you can clearly see by the science that they used it's just not scientific. And they keep funding more and more. And we have a mental health crisis in this country, and it's based on the psychiatric drugs they're giving these children, these cocktails of psychiatric drugs, and they don't like to even hear it. They have no column how many children are on these drugs. There's no exit plan to get these children off these dangerous drugs. So I'm not exactly sure who's the providers, what their actual their foundation is. I only looked at the report outcome, and it did not look good for these providers.
Well, and it all goes back to the kids and the DCF and all those too, because what happens is these kids get funneled into DCF, and then they end up going to these mental health institutions, and then they end up into the system, which is foster care, child care, whatever you want to call it, adoption, and then they get caught in the system, and then the mental health crisis grows and grows and grows because they're giving them the cocktails, like you said, of these pills. They did the same thing to my son, because the previous segment you were talking about was, what they did with my child, and they said he had ADHD, and they wanted to give him drugs, and they wanted to talk to the doctor and ask the doctor, like what drugs right for you, and so next thing you know, my son was on Concerta, and so next thing you know, I'm like feeding him Concerta every morning, so he sits still at school, and then when I picked him up from school, he was falling asleep in the car in the chair on the way to practice. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why is he crashing and burning? This doesn't make any sense. And hopefully, I got him off those things. And I was like, no, but the pediatricians, they just keep doing it. And then they funnel and refer these kids to DCF, saying, oh, the kid's in danger, et cetera, et cetera. And next thing you know, the kid's in the system with all on pills.
Right. The black box suicide warning that our organization, we testified on that way back in 2007 or 6, not exactly sure of the year, where they had to place a suicide warning on these drugs, that it increases the risk of suicide. And that's why they cut me off on the mic, because they don't want that information out there. Concerta is not FDA approved for use in children. So that's off label,
That's crazy.
Wow. And that's what kills me, and it throws me back again. Like you said, the suicide rate. My story from what I went through was I got fired from a job for speaking out at the school board meetings about the mental health crisis that was coming back in May of 2021. And the reason why I did is because my son's pediatrician went out there and told the school board members that I am seeing more kids attempt suicide than I ever had in my whole career. So they didn't put 2 and 2 together and go, wait a minute, if this doctor is telling us that he's not treating kids for COVID, he's treating kids for suicide, depression, and social anxiety and self-isolation. Doesn't that make sense? There's something going on there, and they didn't see it. And then of course here we are now, 4 years later, and we have a mental health crisis.
Yeah, and they're not providing the data. We FOIA'd, not our organization, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, FOIA'd that data from foster care in the state of Connecticut. And we were going on to these meetings where they were cutting off our mic, and we had the breakdown of how many children were on these psychiatric drugs. This information needs to go to lawmakers so they see how much drugs these kids are on. Exactly. And that's the kind of legislation that we're trying to pass. And Indian River is no different than Greenwich, Connecticut, or some of the other towns, the very beautiful towns, these children are being drugged and we're not allowed to talk about it. And that's why we have this event, Shattering the Narrative. We have to be able to talk about it. I don't care how many times my mic will be shut off. I've been doing this a long time and I continue to go forward.
And we need to talk about it because the special taxing district, the hospital is a special taxing district, which means our taxpayer dollars are paying for this.
Yeah, it's a never ending bucket, and they're never going to keep up with the amount of people that are suffering because they keep drugging them. And so we as taxpayers need to really stand up to this and speak out.
Right. I think you mentioned a great point there. We are the taxpayers. We're hiring these boards. We pay for them. They're public servants to us. And, I think it was great. We saw when we were out there at the hospital board meeting, we saw Dr. Zudans really just stand up and just say, enough's enough. And when he started questioning them, you have one of the board members saying, oh, you don't have to answer any questions. You really, we advise you don't have to answer any questions. And he called them out. He said, well, why would you advise somebody not to answer questions of the taxpayers?
That was a really important point, CJ. Absolutely. That was the attorney for the board. And this is what you're up against. It's a very aggressive suppression of the American people. These advisory boards need to be dismantled, in all honesty, because they're only being a shill for the pharmaceutical and the mental health providers. And believe me, Indian River is a very wealthy, very well-funded pharmaceutical based, I want to say, town. They really are.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's why, hence the mental health, wings that they're building at the hospital in order to feed these kids to that wing and to fuel that fuel. Like Rocky said in the comments, it's a pharmaceutical apocalypse. I mean, literally, that's what was coming and that's what was fueled.
And my question is, why are our taxing dollars so involved when we have Cleveland Clinic here? Why do we have to spend so much money on health and services when we have Cleveland Clinic here?
Well, that's a really good point. And I really like the attorney that is on that board. And he's pointed that out several times that, there's a lease that came with that contract. They're not living up to their contract and they want us to bail them out. And Cleveland Clinic is a very well national hospital chain. And this hospital is they have investments that would, if we looked at just their portfolio of their investments, I think people would be outraged that they would be asking us for this money.
I wonder, can the taxpayers trust Cleveland Clinic, and should there be a full audit of the hospital district?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea. A good audit. They're still waiting for documents to be produced. And this sober endeavor that they're going into, the sober house, CJ knows this. He's been in the field and he's also seen it around Indian River. One of the questions was, what's your business plan there? There were other sober houses and there wasn't a shortage of sober houses. And, so I don't know why we're allowing this board to bring us down and buy real estate, and they're just way out of their league.
Yeah. The issue is system is now it's meant to keep people sick and keep them with job security. If there's no sick people, everybody gets well. Again, if we make America healthy again, then there will be no need to be putting all this money into the medical system. So they have a invested interest in keeping you sick in order to fuel their private businesses and, siphon off our tax dollars. This has gotten out of control. People need to call them out on it. We were just at a meeting, me and Sheila last night or 2 nights ago, and they were saying that there's poisonous medicine that they're putting in the water supply in Indian River County. Brevard County just got them to take it out of their water supply. They had to go to their county commission and get everything done to just get that out. So they're saying that they're calling this poisonous medicine fluoride, and they're saying that, why is it even in the water, first of all, and second of all, it's illegal to put any medicine in a water supply. That's just against the law.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And I wonder is, I think the taxing district is required by our county, but only a percentage of it. So if we don't have to go further into spending money on the hospital district, it seems like they're going over and above what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And using taxpayer dollars and acting like they have the power to do that. It seems a little bit unconstitutional when you start really using the taxpayer dollars for a lot of these things.
I agree. I think that the entire picture needs to be looked at. Cleveland Clinic was not the only choice. This board selected this out of 3 bids, and they are, we want them to do well. There's no doubt about it that we want them to do well, but we're not stupid. We're not going to bail a hospital chain out that has investments that, are probably worth most of this town's net worth. It's crazy. One of the guys that came to testify actually read off. I was going to bring it, and I went over the numbers of their investments. And I was like, oh my God, how could they have the audacity to ask us for money and then to tax us? This is not just a 1-year tax plan. This is like we're going to pan it out over 5 years. So it's not such a burden on you. It's just ridiculous. And again, funding that they do with the children and the mental health, it's something that Able Child, being that I am here, I am going to look a little deeper into, because there is no exit plan for these children to get off these drugs. And we need a line item, what they're spending on these drugs.
That makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend that said they had their baby in the hospital for the NICU for, I think it was 2 weeks, and they would charge them $750,000 to have their baby there. And they offered them a bottle of water, and they didn't say anything, but then they itemized it as $25 for a bottle of water. So it's getting beyond ridiculous. You look at any other country, their health costs are not even half of what ours is for the same exact services. So
it's crazy how the town was so adamant about getting Cleveland Clinic here when it was coming in the first time. We had the Indian River Hospital. It was more of a nonprofit type of situation. It was more of a county community share type of scenario. And then they just bailed it, and then just took Cleveland Clinic, just came in and scooped it right up. And that was all by design. And I could see it happen. And I was like, wow, Cleveland Clinic's coming to Vero. And now here they are. Now they're here. Now you know why they came to Vero. Perfect example. They're the richest county in the pretty much per capita in the whole state of Florida. Makes total sense.
I tried to look information up, like for videos on that last meeting. I couldn't find any.
There should be.
Yeah, that's funny. That's weird, because we were looking for it too, and we couldn't find it. Only in the video we had actually taken it with our media team. There we had, which we were lucky enough to put in, but they had all the cameras and everything set up. We just haven't seen that publicized yet. We're wondering why. That's why we had our own private gear there. We're not leaving it up to them to get this information out to the public. The Spark Free Press will report on that.
Yeah. So guys, I want to thank you for coming on. I want you to stick around. We're going to take a short commercial break.
or not the agenda can get done. You are seeing kind of some of these Republicans who usually are hawkish on China somewhat fall in line on President-elect Trump's stance on TikTok. I've only seen a few Republican senators somewhat break with the president-elect on what to do with TikTok. So I thought that was interesting. But to your point, we have this really beautiful live picture there of St. John's Episcopal Church. If you're familiar with Washington, it's right across the street from the White House, right across the street from Lafayette Square. And to your point, Stephanie, on Inauguration days, in memoriam, it has been used for the incoming president-elect to, if they are imbued with their personal faith, to reflect, to ask for God's divine grace and thanks and forgiveness as they embark on this incredibly, extremely weighty job, the weight of the world falling on the shoulders of those who sit in the Oval Office. And that's what we're seeing right now happen there. And so I thought it was interesting. Obviously, President Biden is an adherent of the Catholic faith. He's a devout Catholic. So he did not do this tradition back in 2021. He chose instead to participate in a service there at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, a really, really beautiful church. For those of our Catholic viewers in Washington, Biden chose that church before getting sworn in back in January of 2021. So yes, if you are the incoming president-elect, you can choose based on your faith, but this has been a tradition going back many, many decades, I believe even to some of our founding fathers, and it is quintessential Washington. It is imbued with history. And you're seeing right now the motorcade posted up outside St. John's there as this service is underway. So you're right, we're not going to get any live pictures inside, but we will see the departure from St. John's, where I believe the president-elect and the first lady and the vice president-elect and the second lady will go from that church, I believe, to the White House to meet with the Bidens.
And I also wanted, Andrew, to bring up for our viewers right here some additional information about the St. John's Church. And you mentioned President Biden being of Catholic faith. St. John's is Episcopalian. And just for our viewers right there, just wanted to share some historical information right there. As you mentioned, it is known as the Church of Presidents, as it has welcomed every president to worship, beginning with James Madison. So, talking about the traditions and the history behind every event that we are going to be seeing today, many of them being started by some of those many, many years ago. Not every president has followed every single one of these traditions, some of them making their own tradition. And, as I was, taking a look at some of the history, seeing one of those trivias, which was, JFK being the last president to be sworn in to wear a top hat. So, history being made every single time, there is a swearing in ceremony. And I have to imagine, Andrew, that there is going to be history made. President-elect Trump, not one necessarily to stand on tradition. As he was mentioning, as he was campaigning, he is looking to forge a new path to disrupt the status quo, already doing that even before being officially sworn in and looking ahead to the next 4 years. I have to imagine we are likely going to be seeing a lot of firsts.
Yeah, I think that will be somewhat evident in the slate of executive orders that will be kind of signed by Trump's pen and his hand today. Fox News Digital is reporting that there are scores of them ready to go. And that is what kind of the presidential transition is for, Stephanie. You have a lot of these people who are going to be working with you for the next 4 years. They're incoming White House staff, incoming agency staff. And they have relied on some kind of outside think tanks and nonprofits, conservative ones at that, to help them draft these. So these have been ready to go really for a while. It's not like they're being drafted last minute. And it really runs the gamut on the environment, on the southern border, and so much more, on the kind of civil and federal bureaucracy about what powers the executive has to fire government employees at will here. And so we're going to see that after the inauguration, after the swearing in. They are ready to go, according to some of our reporting. And that's what a transition is for. But to your point, Donald Trump in 2017, after winning the 2016 election, he vowed to change up the status quo. His very election was the definition of that. And you can argue, and historians will, on whether he did that in his first term. And so now we're going to see a second Trump term, and you're going to see him partake and pursue some of the policy routes that he didn't necessarily get to in the first term. That is what a second term is for. Obviously, there was an interregnum of 4 years as President Biden and Vice President Harris won that election back in 2020. And so, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on what is going to be priority number one. But he's going to have a lot of latitude. He's going to have a lot of leeway because he has the House and the Senate to really reshape how things are done here. He created the Department of Government Efficiency already. There's been some reporting out there that Vivek Ramaswamy is out already at that. And so that was another, remember, feature of the first Trump presidency. A lot of staff shakeups. They really had to get their, steady bearing under them. There was a lot of cabinet resignations. There was a lot of firings. There's just a lot of turnover. And I'm not necessarily sure if you're going to see that this time.
It's so true, Andrew, and it's going to be very interesting, I have to say, as you were mentioning the difference between 2017 and now. Of course, so much has happened in the world. It's a different time right now. We have been seeing a lot of wars, a lot of conflicts, a lot of different issues arise that perhaps weren't even in existence back 4 years ago. A tremendous amount of change has occurred as we take another live look at the nation's capital, where we see the American flag there waving in the distance. And of course, wind chill, Andrew, continuing to be a conversation maker, as so much of what we were expecting today, we were preparing for, has changed because of the weather, the incredibly cold weather in the 20s. And of course, it feels much colder. And so, there is not that much pomp and circumstance. We're not going to be seeing the outdoor parade. We are going to be seeing it inside the Capital One Arena. But again, just very different from what I think a lot of people were preparing for. And it's not just physical preparement, right? We have the nation, we have President-elect Trump winning the popular vote, the electoral vote. So many people anticipating and waiting for this moment. They've been waiting for years. And unfortunately, many of the people who have made this journey to Washington, D.C., not going to be able to witness it firsthand because it's inside. And I have to imagine a lot of disappointed people today, as well as, of course, celebration, just different for them.
Yeah, I myself have never been or never attended an inauguration, but I would imagine it's just, you really feel the sense of history and the pomp and circumstance when you do travel to Washington, and you get to kind of bask in, how we do this, how we have done this uninterrupted for almost the last 250 years. And just have to note, obviously, the last inauguration, President Trump did not attend that inauguration. At the time, Vice President Pence, he attended Biden and Harris's swearing in here. So he is back. And so that uninterrupted transition, peaceful transition of power, you've heard it a lot from President Biden in the last couple of days. You heard it a lot from Vice President Harris and incoming President-elect Trump. That is what they are committed to. But I want to go back to this, which I think is interesting. We've been talking about faith and how important faith is to our elected leaders, including and especially the President of the United States. You and I just anchored, of course, special coverage of the 39th President Jimmy Carter's funeral as the nation said goodbye to him earlier this month, and faith was a really big part of his life and of his presidency as well. And obviously, the question is, what Bible will President-elect Trump use to be sworn in on? He will use two Bibles. He will use his mother's Bible and Lincoln's Bible, of course, that was used by Abraham Lincoln in 1861. It's been used for, I believe, every modern swearing in the modern president.
I love Monday.com.
What's Monday.com?
And then we're going to bring on Thomas Kenny to discuss the sidewalk situation from City Council. All right, let's go to a commercial break. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the board report. We've got John Karapi and Thomas Kenny, editor-in-chief of the Sunshine Journal. Hello, Thomas.
How are you guys?
Doing good. Doing real good.
Hey there, Mr. Karapi. What's going
What's
on?
up, buddy? How you doing? I like your hat. Nice.
Hey, we're talking about schools and fools.
Oh, boy.
Well, Thomas, we need that update on what's going on with the city council and that sidewalk deal.
Oh, it's a sidewalk. Now it's a boardwalk. It might just be a concrete walk. We have it at the Sunshine Journal currently live on Substack. And I can share that with you if you want to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Hold on one second there. So, well, I don't have it now. You can go on the Sunshine Journal, substack.com/the @ Sunshine Journal will bring you there. And basically what happened this week, back last June, the city council in their due diligence and stuff like that voted to put in a weaving sidewalk at the oceanfront edge of Humiston Park behind the dunes, which ecologically makes perfect sense. That previous concrete walk that everyone calls the nostalgic boardwalk, that's only a block and a half long, roughly 450 feet. I mean, it's not a boardwalk. It's not a boardwalk like, if you come from the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic or these traditional bigger beach towns where they got Ferris wheels and concert venues and nightlife on their boardwalk, and it makes it equal as part to actually going to the ocean itself, and they have the cool fish restaurants you can't go anywhere else to get and all that stuff. This is not us. This is just a little park. It's a block and a half long. It's got 4 entry points onto the beach, and it's become a town buzz. So they voted 4-0 because it was, it cost $800,000. They're going to put 2 pavilions there at $40,000 a piece, the shade pavilions, and then the lifeguard stand is another $150,000. So roughly $1 million. And the city had it budgeted and everything, and they were expecting FEMA to put up $400,000 at a minimum. Turns out their application asked for a whole bunch of stuff. FEMA's like, hey, none of this is yours. One of the things that they asked for was, hey, replace our ADA handicap access ramp. Well, they never had one, and FEMA saw that, and so they're like, we're not buying that for you. So there was that, and then there was the sand dune replacement. They asked for, it was about $30,000 worth of. There it is. Thank you, guys. Your producers are cracking.
I'm telling you, man.
So the big X thing is me, being arty,
Well, FEMA
being artsy in Canva. But our crack art staff, and that's a picture of the artist rendition of the sidewalk that got voted down.
Well, FEMA's final assessment was only 83,000, right?
Right. And the funny thing was, so you had that, if you look at that brown house there, they used to be across the top of the dunes, was that concrete walk that it had if you guys scroll down a little bit in that article, you'll see it. There'll be a picture of it. You guys can do that. That would be awesome for your viewers. So there it is. It's a beautiful thing there. Like you can put the pointer there on those nice metal guardrails that look like a boardwalk. No, they don't. They look like prison bars. And then if you see right there in the front behind the green planting, there's the junction box for the power that's run along the top of the boardwalk. Concrete walk. It's not the most majestic looking structure for beach nostalgia that you've seen. That thing's been there for about 45 years. And the reason it's there is because the wooden structures kept getting destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It's costing the city a lot of money. So they built this thing. Anyway, a section off, if that's facing north, so a section south was what broke. It was a 16-foot long section, about 192 square feet of the 5,321 square feet that thing is. And FEMA was like, hey, that's all that broke here. We're going to fix that. Here's $400,000. That's our initial assessment. And they asked for all this sand for the dunes. Now the county and the city have what they call an interlocal agreement, where through the tourist development tax, the county does all, that's how the beach is renourished with the sand. So they do the dunes and all that stuff. So they put in their assessment to FEMA, hey, we got $30,000 worth of, it was like a bunch of sand and the dune renourishment. The plants were like $30,000 in and of themselves. And FEMA came back and said, you guys got this agreement. You're not getting any of this money either. So they just kept FEMA whittled it down to $83,000. And they asked for that whole thing to be replaced at $1.991 million. $1,991,000. So they put in a proposal for that and got back 83 grand.
That was disappointing.
So at this point, they're panicking because they've budgeted $1 million. They wanted, and I think what they were thinking is look, if we get half of this, we'll just put the thing back the way it was. Now, I'm speculating, but that seems to be what the case is. And it turns out, so then they come to the county because now they have no money. And they're like, hey, county. And the tourist development tax, in all honesty, should be paying for this anyway. I think the city has a real argument there because that's what it's for. It's tourists they come to where? The beach. They do other
whole
events.
Little section there, a lot of tourists go. I mean, even when my brother came and stayed, he loved that area. He was like, oh my gosh, I love Vero Beach. I said, don't tell anyone.
And for what Vero Beach is, that park and its serenity, and it's a very calm atmosphere. It's not a hustle and bustle like in say Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, or or the Jersey Shore, where you got all this nightlife and everything. For what Vero Beach is, it makes perfect sense. The park is that, it just gives that nice quiet solitude, quiet enjoyment of nature.
Well, Thomas,
the star out there is the ocean. It's not that boardwalk, that's for sure.
What about the citizens? So some of the citizens wanted the boardwalk to be more old, nostalgic, like they even wanted to donate money towards it.
And it's true. And so, the staff came back after the citizens made the uproar, and they were like, hey, we recommend the concrete one. And I'm thinking, the citizens want the nostalgia 1930s boardwalk. Right? That's what they want. And it would lend to that aesthetic that I just talked about. So, that makes sense. It's actually a little cheaper than the concrete. But here's the thing, the maintenance. And it goes back to this tourist development tax issue. The city averages about 49% of all tourist tax and revenue coming in. They just raised it another penny. And Let's Talk Vero did a poll survey. It had 214 participants so far, 109 city, 105 county. Overwhelmingly, 86% said the TDT, the tourist development tax, should be paying for this upkeep. Because look, tourism is a product that Indian River sells. But some of these county commissioners don't want to do that. You know, we still have a quarter point of this tax going to Dodgertown. Dodgertown was primarily, it was written in the code because it's this professional sports team was there, and that was the Dodgers. But the Dodgers are gone.
Yeah.
You know, when they were here, many of you residents know, because people were renting out their houses for 6 weeks or whatever and doing all that stuff, brought a lot of revenue into the town. All these visitors, newspaper reporters. You got a National League baseball team here with a historic background, and now they're gone. Now MLB still does that. It's the Jackie Robinson training center or whatever it is, but they'll have, like, you know, Babe Ruth baseball, intercity leagues, club teams. They all come in, but it doesn't produce, I don't think, the excitement of, say, an LA Dodgers.
So Thomas, why would they want to be different from, like, JC Beach, when that boardwalk was totally torn up? They still put a new boardwalk right back up. It's a nice wood boardwalk. So why would they not want to do the same thing?
I think they've always wanted to do the same thing. I think the problem was they had no money. Yeah, they lost a big referendum here in November. I mean, you think about this. You have polled in this referendum to develop downtown. You have polled about 3,000 people through your website. And I talked to some of the people behind all that. They said we polled about 3,000 people. They had a 60-70% approval on this referendum. Now, I don't know where those people were located, but when the city came out and voted, 65% said no. So how did you screw up the polling, or they were blindsided? And it's funny. We wrote an article about this referendum being shot down here at the Sunshine Journal. If you guys can go find it, it's not too long ago, back in November, I believe it was. And the reality of it was that people were like, well, these Trump voters came out and they saw development and they said, no, if we had just done this in an off season where more people know about the issue. I think the people in this city know about the issue. You don't blame the Trump voters. Trump voters are very aware of government spending.
Sounds like they were trying to get political there.
Yeah, well, you know, and that's the thing, is people project all these assumptions out there. And the bottom line is, if 65% of your city residents said no, even though you polled, quote, 3,000 people, and you got about a 60 to 70% somewhere in there, the exact opposite, who are you who are you listening to?
I don't think they're listening to the people.
Yeah, well, I think the people just, you know, John Coutinho said it best. He goes, we got an answer, and so we have to do better at explaining. I, for one, think some type of development rules do have to change down there for the future of the city. The city's looking for revenue. You know, the Three Corners project is ultimately a tax revenue thing. The development down there is tax revenue thing. But when you ran in 2022, you hit it right on the head. You were talking about, look, people will move here if the jobs are here. And the service industries, God bless them all. There are a lot of people who do this, but, you know, not everybody's a service industry specialist. There has to be other industry here.
And service industry is mostly lower income. You're not going to make a really good income in service unless you have people coming here that are filling up the restaurants and they're giving you large tips. It's not.
Yeah, and any restaurant manager will tell you that their staff is either they're serious, they're in schools, they have second jobs. They're not everyone's a trained bartender that has certain skill sets that can really make money at this, and some of them are wanting to go into management. But the problem is, you know, the service industry and the medical field is not the only career paths that are out there, and schools. Look, this is what bugs me about Indian River County and its conservatism. The top 3 job providers are schools, hospital, county government.
That's it.
And the only other person who's got 1,000 employees or more is Piper. God bless them. Thank God.
And then the school district comes right behind them.
No, the school district's number 1.
Oh, yeah. And then the hospital.
Hospital 2, county government 3, Piper's like 4 or 5. I think they're 4. But they're the only private industry up there over 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. I have to double check that, but the reality of it is that it's like you campaign. We need good paying jobs, and we need to market. Because look, if you're building a tract of 800 homes over here and 1,000 homes over there, and the county's approving all this development,
Where's the
right?
jobs?
Where's the jobs? Well, the other side of that is,
well, the problem is we have a lot of old politicians that want to support the retirement. Well, we're a retirement community, and the problem with the retirement community is their health care is Medicare. It's not purchased health care, private health care, so it doesn't give a good revenue for the hospital. So your
absolutely. And look at the conversation you just had. Look at the conversation you just had. They want a $13.6 million bailout because Medicare is not paying them. And anyone who will tell you, if you remember the battle of Obamacare back in 2010, they said this was the time in the 20s, 10 years down the road, when the fan is going to get polluted, right? Mm-hmm. And the payments are going to come back, and the one of the things, I used to run some conferences with Cedar-Sinai LA and all these big hospitals with Mass Mutual, and I can tell you, they anticipated, the feds not paying their Medicare share or Medicaid share, and that they're paying 19 to 25 cents on the dollar or whatever it is, but it's not a dollar, it's like a quarter of it, and so you've got Cleveland Clinic over here going, yeah, man, we're in the hole. Can you bail us out? And then they're building another hospital on finance.
So, Thomas, where do you think we stand with this boardwalk?
I think it'll get done. In that article, I point out that it's not very clear what they're designing, because they did vote on a concrete structure, and the one thing that's always crazy to me is that the terms aren't really always defined. So people are, we like a boardwalk, a concrete structure. Well, the concrete walk, or do you want a boardwalk? So I would agree you need a concrete base, and then you can plank the top of it and make it look historic. They have $175,000 pledged. Tom Core pledged $100,000.
Welcome in Vice President Harris and a second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, right there, as they are also preparing to participate in this swearing-in ceremony. Of course, having that farewell ceremony as well. We see them, standing at attention. And I also want to bring in this, Jim, because there's the political dynamic that we're going to see at play today right here as well. And even in the same party, you take a look at this and you see President Biden really being forced out by his own party, and then Vice President Harris tapped to take on President-elect Trump. And we see this, we're also going to see this at play, during the swearing-in ceremony, as we also talk about who will be there and, of course, who will not be there. And we do know that Michelle Obama will not be in attendance. She wasn't at the funeral service for former President Jimmy Carter, also not attending the swearing-in ceremony. And that's getting a lot of chatter. What can you make of that, Jim? What can you share with us in terms of that perspective?
Well, again, if you look at our history, we've had, I think, 4 different presidents who have not attended their successors' inauguration, all the way back to 1801, when John Adams, the second president, refused to attend the ceremony for Thomas Jefferson in 1801. A very bitter campaign. And Adams got up at 4 a.m. and left the Capitol rather than attend. His son, John Quincy Adams, did not attend when Jackson came in too. Another cantankerous time. What I would point out is, I think we ought to look back. Reagan's inaugural, his very first inaugural, when he defeated Jimmy Carter. Again, bitter campaign. Carter was bitterly disappointed. Reagan got up and he started his inaugural by saying that the orderly transfer of authority as called by the Constitution routinely takes place, as it has for almost 2 centuries. And few of us stop to think about how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. In the very next statement, he spoke to Carter, calling him Mr. President. I want the nation to know how you've helped me in this transition of power. That is something that we should not take for granted. It's good that President Biden and that Vice President Harris are going to be attending. It's very important that they do that. For his own reasons, Donald Trump did not attend 4 years ago, but we need to reestablish that and keep that as the peaceful transfer of power in our government, or we don't have much of a government. But it's good to look back at somebody like Reagan, who was very gracious about it, very gracious with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter before him had been very gracious with Gerald Ford after Watergate, who had pardoned Richard Nixon, by the way, and one of the reasons he didn't win. So as I see it, it's important that the president and vice president attend. Other people like Michelle Obama can make their own decisions. I would prefer that she would come rather than have the distraction, but it's definitely her decision about what to do. As I understand it, President Obama is going to be attending. So this is an important point and an important moment in our constitutional government. And really, we see a lot of grace by many people who have gone through this. And we also see others who have decided not to attend. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, it's no stranger to anyone that it's hard to lose. It's hard to lose on such a public stage as a U.S. presidential election. I want to talk, though, with you about the inaugural address, and we can maybe get into what your favorite inaugural address is as the presidential historian. Mine is Lincoln's second inaugural here. But what will Trump say today? Will he, like Reagan, give a nod, give some words in his speech to both Biden and Harris in some show of grace? I'll be looking for that because obviously that portion in his first inaugural back in 2017, the American Carnage section, a lot of people infamously remember that. But he's saying his speech is going to be one of unity today.
And I also wanted to share with our viewers, Andrew, Jim, before you answer that, it does appear that President-elect Trump is departing now. St. John's Church, we saw him alongside Melania Trump exiting the church. It does seem as though the service has wrapped up. They're walking hand in hand right there, and he's smiling to the crowd. Thank you, he says, mouthing those words and walking into the escort right there, the convoy. And I just wanted to share that with our viewers as we continue to take a live look. But, Andrew was sharing some of his favorite, inaugural speeches. Do you have one?
Yes. I mean, if you look at inaugurals, Andrew, as you've said, the message of unity is what's most important. And you see it again and again. A lot of these inaugurals are a genre that, follows kind of a pattern. The president starting off humbly thanking the voters, essentially saying, I'm not sure I'm up to the task, as George Washington famously said in his very first inaugural, and then going through and saying, as Thomas Jefferson did in 1801, this dispute with Adams, he said, then we are all Federalists, we are all Republicans, meaning we're all Americans. And after hard campaigns, a president needs to unify the country because the president's going to be governing the entire country. And so that's a very important message. I've seen that Trump is intending to talk about unity. Actually, if you look back at his speech, the American Carnage speech from 4 years ago, he actually did talk about unity there too. And so it is a really important message. But if you ask me, what are the important inaugurals? Obviously, Washington's, Jefferson's, and then I agree with Andrew, both of Lincoln's, but especially Lincoln's second inaugural, which was very important. Again, the country then torn apart by war and 600,000 Americans losing their lives, huge change in the country politically. And Lincoln chose that occasion to say, with malice towards none, with charity for all, let us bind up our wounds. That's the kind of message that you need to have after you've had a rough and tumble time, and especially when you've had, such a severe war. The other two that I really like are Franklin Roosevelt's 1933, The Only Thing We Have to Fear is Fear Itself, where he tried to calm the nation in the midst of this Great Depression. And it was a really important message that calmed the fears in the country that, banks closing and things like that. It was a really difficult time. His message was one of fortitude and, bucking up the American people. And then my absolute favorite actually is JFK's 1961 inaugural, when he talked about, you let the torch be passed to us, and then we need to be a country of service. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's a wonderful, beautiful speech, very well put together, beautifully delivered on a day not unlike today. It was about 22 degrees. You can see the breath. And Kennedy got up, no hat, no overcoat, and gave this very stirring speech that is worth watching, and I think considered one of the top 2 or 3 inaugurals.
Jim, I also wanted to ask too, because we are in 30 days of mourning as a country in the wake of the death of former President Carter. President Biden issuing the guidance and the order for all American flags on federal buildings to be lowered to half staff. But in the last couple of days, you've heard from Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. You've heard from some Republican governors like Greg Abbott, like Ron DeSantis, and others saying that for today, the American flag should be raised back to full staff. On some state houses, that is going to happen. But we're learning, according to some reports, that Speaker Johnson also had ordered that for the U.S. Capitol. But some reports saying right now that the staff, the crew are trying to bring it back to full staff, but the cords are frozen because it is so cold. I wanted to ask, though, was there a previous time when the nation was under a 30-day period of mourning for a former president?
The building directly across the street from Humiston Park, where they house the Warren Corporation.
Yeah, I saw that. And John Carroll and Aaron Voss also pledged some
Aaron
money
Voss,
as
35,
well.
and Aaron Voss has already said on record that he said, "Look, we're not going to put in any more than what we've already budgeted for." And I believe, I heard on the radio the other day, and I still have to verify it, but Joe Flesher over at the county commission said, we could probably pony up the 400,000. After all, that's what they did essentially vote for. They are going to have to rescind that vote and then vote for what the city just decided, because the city in with a unanimous vote rescinded the sidewalk. Right now, the county commission is pledged to the sidewalk, and they're very specific on these things, so they're going to have to probably rescind or amend and then go back and say we're for the project that they put forth. But the project isn't entirely clear.
I don't mean to cut you off. We got about 15 seconds. Tell people how to get a hold of you and how to get subscribe to the Sunshine Journal.
Substack.com/@ the @ symbol, the Sunshine Journal. Substack.com/@ the Sunshine Journal.
All right. Well, let's bring up our panel, folks, everybody from the panel to join us, and we'll have a complete discussion on our topics today.
Hi, Susan.
Look at that.
There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Look at
Hi, guys.
full screen.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Really good. Thank you. Thank you for having us on. I love your work, Thomas. And
Thank you.
I appreciate you keeping everybody informed regarding what's going on. It's very important. And CJ, you're awesome. So I just really appreciate everybody here.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for being a part of this. It's our second episode, and it played out perfect because our main drive is school board, but there's so many different things playing in our county, and knowing what's going on with our tax dollars. Like I say to everybody, I ask people, how many taxing districts are you subject to? Do you even know? They don't know. And I ask them, when's the school board meeting, if they have kids, and they have no clue. And, do you know anything about a hospital district? And they're like, they don't know what a hospital district is. So getting the word out and recapping some of the piles of nonsense or stuff that gets swept under the rug that costs us money as taxpayers, I can appreciate you guys for sure for coming on. I do have a question for you, Sheila. With your movement being a national, mission, who's your biggest advocate as far as, let's say, in Washington, or politicians that are actually getting behind you and helping you with this?
Well, we've done a lot of work with Ron Paul and Rand Paul. So he proposed a piece of legislation, the Parental Rights Act, on the federal level. We've worked extensively with Senator Grassley's office. We're doing a lot of pieces on the attempted assassination of President Trump and the butler, and we've been supplying the committee, the full committee, of our writings on the lack of data on Thomas Crook. So we're pretty much embedded, I think, with Senator Grassley's point of view. We've worked with him over a long period of time.
That's great. Anybody in particular that's more of a wrench in the wheel, that's more friction than anything?
Well, over a long period of time, I've been up against now deceased Ted Kennedy. I was up against him up in the Boston newspaper about the medication of children and his push for parity. And so, I'm hoping that Robert Kennedy Jr., his team will be featured at our event on February 8th. We're hoping, Make America Healthy Again will help. We've worked on the No Child Left Behind with former President Bush, and Neil Bush was supportive. So we work with both sides of the aisle, and we're going to continue to do that and educate lawmakers. We work in Tennessee with the Tennessee Star, has been very supportive. Lawmakers come and go, the corruption stays. So media is a big play for us. That's why we're supporting CJ and the Spark. We really want to build this up. Able Child, as a nonprofit, wants to support the informed consent part of it. So good question. We're going to see what this new president brings. And Steve Bannon, had me on his show, and I'm in contact with him a lot on different stories. And I said, I've seen a lot of presidents come and go. And so I'm always happy to work with anybody in Democrats and Republicans.
That's awesome. CJ, can you hear? I'm not sure if you can hear me, CJ.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. My video might be a little bit weird, but
I think you froze up. But I wanted to ask you almost the same question. With your publication in our county, do you get any pushback when people see that it's more conservative or MAGA or MAHA? Do you get any pushback from your publication in our county?
Well, look, if we didn't get pushback, we wouldn't be doing our job. If we didn't get, banned on Facebook every now and then, we wouldn't be doing our job, right? I mean, we live in times of the most censorship you have ever seen in this country. So, big tech has had a grip on free speech until Elon Musk. So, yeah, we get tons of pushback, but, we're going to tell the truth, and we're going to get to the bottom of the story, no matter what the result, what the result is with the pushback.
I can just imagine. I mean, we're kind of in the same line of work as far as, trying to push the truth out there. And we see the trolls that will bleed into the comments section, and they'll always try to steer the narrative and push the false news out there. Like we're bad people trying to do away with the desegregation order. But, and we saw that in our comments of the last episode, but there's really nothing political about it. especially when it comes to informed consent, in our children, or our tax dollars, like with the sidewalk or the boardwalk. So not to leave you out, Thomas, what is this costing us as county taxpayers or city residents? What's this debacle next going to cost us?
Well, it's not really a debacle. It is what it is, but it's how it's, there's this thing called a tourist development tax. And it basically, the county's divided up into two districts: the city, which is 13 square miles, and the rest of it, which is 617 square miles. Okay. The city provides 48% of the revenue. The county provides the other 52%. And I think the city deserves its portion. Now, some people say, well, the city hotels get used for county events. True. But the reality of it is some people might not come if those hotels weren't located next to a beach, which where the city is. and the vice versa. They might not come if they don't have the county event. So that's it. To me, the bottom.
Warren Harding was one. Very few people come out of the Senate and become president. A lot of them come from the House. A lot of them are governors like Reagan and Carter. But these two people, J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris, both come out of the Senate tradition, which is a very collegial fight, but then get along type of atmosphere. And you could kind of see it in the way they greeted each other. There was grace there on both sides. And I think that that's an important message for the American people, that we can disagree vehemently about policies and about all sorts of things that are really important to us. But at the end of the day, just like those senators have to get along in their legislating for the American people, those two showed that they have Senate blood in them, so to speak, that they both are willing to be collegial and to speak to each other as human beings and as fellow politicians. So I was pleased to see that. I was pleased to see the smiles, and I think it's an important message for the American people.
And I also wanted to share, Jim.
Andrew Kraft here. So talking about their Senate careers, they weren't in the Senate for very long, Harris nor Vance at all. So they didn't necessarily get to, show maybe their legislative bona fides. They were really instantly catapulted to the White House, so to speak, weren't they?
Yes, it's a good point, Andrew. I'm not sure they overlap with each other. I don't think they did. I think she was vice president.
They didn't, no.
Yeah, when he was elected. I'm from Ohio, so I know J.D. Vance. I don't know him personally, but I know about him. And, I know that when he was in the Senate, he didn't have enough time to really establish himself, as you've said. She kind of established herself when she was doing essentially cross-examination of Supreme Court justice candidates and also on a banking committee. So she was known for being she's a former prosecutor, and she was known for that, in her time in the Senate. She had a little more time there than he did. But if you look at J.D. Vance, it's an interesting thing. Ohio, along with Virginia, claims the most presidents. And the Virginia presidents all came early on: George Washington, Monroe, Madison, Jefferson, and so forth. And then we had the Civil War. And from the Civil War until Warren Harding in 1920, Ohio ruled the presidency. It was Grant, Hayes, Garfield, McKinley, Taft, just a slew of Ohioans. And Ohio became known as the mother of presidents, because many of those people were born in Ohio, but not necessarily, like Grant ran from Illinois. But Ohio was known as a swing state. It was known as a heart of the country type state where, people from both sides would share power back and forth. It's become very red at this point. It's become very ruby red at this point. The Ohio legislature is supermajority Republican. And we now have two Republican senators, because Sherrod Brown just lost his re-election campaign. So he came out of that milieu, which is a little bit different from the former Ohio presidents who came out of a milieu where there was more of a give and take in Ohio and a division, pretty equal division in the state. It's why it was a bellwether state for over 100 years. But all of those Ohio presidents were Republicans. They were in the tradition of Lincoln. They were in the tradition of reconstructing the South and so forth. A lot of interesting stories about them. And so J.D. Vance falls into that. I think we've had one vice president who is from Ohio, but it'll be interesting to see what he gets to do, how he's included in the the decisions that are made in the next 4 years. Jimmy Carter started the tradition with Mondale of bringing him into the Oval Office and giving him an office in the White House and consulting with him regularly. And that's been more or less true, but I think it'll be interesting to see. Donald Trump is such a dominant leader, and J.D. Vance has so little experience, relatively speaking. It'll be interesting to see how much he's included and what task he's given, by the president, or if he'll be less of an authority than in the past. So very interesting questions to come.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, Jim, because, talking about the role of the vice president during former President Jimmy Carter's funeral, we were hearing the words of the late former Vice President Mondale, and talking about the reason why he accepted was because he wanted the role of the vice president to be one that was respected, one that was more equal than in years past. And it is going to be interesting to see what that dynamic is like and what role J.D. Vance will play as we continue to take a look outside of Blair House. We are expecting President-elect Trump to depart momentarily. And on the lower right-hand side of your screen, that is an aerial view from inside the Capitol Rotunda, just a stunning view as we take a look. And previously, there were some singers. It does look like perhaps the ceremony, that portion of it has concluded as we do see people exit right there, but just sharing with our viewers the different vantage points as we continue to watch in real time the events unfold. But it is absolutely interesting to see the very beginning, almost, Jim and Andrew, of what is to come in the next 4 years, setting the stage for what is likely to be a very different presidency. And you were mentioning the dynamic and the role, couching that in historical context with previous dynamics and relationships between former presidents and their vice presidents. Andrew, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what unfolds.
Yeah, that's so true. I just have to note, we do see Marine One there in front of the Capitol. That's always a very, very cool shot there. Maybe we could take that full. You see the presidential helicopter there in front of the U.S. Capitol. And so we'll see who gets on that. I believe it will take the Bidens away, and then it will also take the Trumps to the White House. But my producers can correct me if I'm wrong on that front. Can we take the shot of Blair House? While we have Jim, can we just talk about the significance of Blair House? From my understanding, it's kind of like the country's guest room, so to speak. What do we know about it?
Yeah. What we know is that during the Second World War, when Winston Churchill came to the United States and stayed for weeks on end in the White House with Franklin Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt was not very happy about that. And eventually she said to him, why don't we have Blair House, which had been there, become kind of our guest house for dignitaries who come rather than having them stay in the White House. There are these hilarious stories of Winston Churchill walking around, the White House in the middle of the night. And there's one very famous story of him standing up naked in a bathtub that he was in, saying the Prime Minister of England has nothing to hide from the President of the United States. It was just, it was a real annoyance to Eleanor Roosevelt. So Blair House became kind of this very famous place for distinguished guests to stay. But during Truman's time, the White House was literally falling apart. And so they went in. You ought to see some of the pictures of this. They gutted the White House during Truman's administration, and he lived across the street in Blair House during that time. So it became kind of the White House itself. Then they recreated the White House to what it is now. But it was literally, they were worried that it was going to collapse because it had been so weakened over time. And during that time when Truman was in the Blair House, there was a Puerto Rican nationalist uprising at the time. And there were several of the Puerto Rican nationalists who got guns, came to Blair House to try to assassinate Truman. They got as far as the guards in front of Blair House. Truman was actually taking a nap inside. Several of the guards were killed. The nationalists were killed. It was a really traumatic incident at that time. But the Blair House goes way back. I mean, the people who stayed there and came over to see Lincoln when he was in the White House is interesting. But it really became what you talked about, Andrew, a kind of let's have our visitors stay in the Blair House as opposed to having them stay in the White House.
And as we talk about the Blair House, we are still waiting for President-elect Donald Trump to depart. But this is a live look there at the Capitol where we were seeing his daughter, Ivanka Trump, arrive along with a number of other family members right there. This is a live look as they already are starting to trickle in inside the Capitol. You see Eric Trump right there as well, walking inside, of course, awaiting for President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance to arrive. But another historical moment in the making, Jim and Andrew, as this is really just the second time that the swearing-in ceremony is taking place inside at the Capitol Rotunda because of the weather, the incredibly cold weather. But what's also interesting to note is that there have been very cold swearing-in ceremonies that have taken place outdoor. And Jim, historically, when we're taking a look at the decision-making process when it comes to whether or not to hold an inauguration, traditionally outside or now shifting inside, what is the thought process historically when it comes to determining, the events and where they take place?
Good question. Very good question. It gives us a chance to talk about this building too a little bit. When the Capitol was built, the very first building was the Senate building, which is just to the right of the big dome right there. That was the original structure that was built. And then they began to build the middle part that will be the rotunda. The original rotunda had a cap to it that was much, much smaller than the one you see. In fact, the one you see was built during the time of Abraham Lincoln. You can see pictures of it being constructed during one of his inaugurals. So they built that, and then the house was built on the other side. And then eventually they expanded the two wings. So where the Senate is now is further out, where the House is now is further out. But so in that context, these inaugurations took place in various stages and in various places. The Senate building was originally used, as was the House chamber, for the very first presidents. The first time it went outside was Andrew Jackson, and they used the east portico, not the west. The west portico is where it's been done since Ronald Reagan switched it from the east to the west, where you look down the mall and that beautiful setting that you've shown pictures of. It always prior to that was on the east side, and the east side is where you see those famous pictures of Lincoln when he's giving his second inaugural are on the east side. What's interesting is once they built this huge dome on top of the structure, it really made the pillars that were in front of the east look very small and out of place. So there was a project to redo that, and they took those pillars down. They took that facade down. And if you're in Washington and want to have some fun, those pillars are all in the National, I think, Arboretum, standing like, if you went to Rome and saw ruins and so forth, those pillars are out there. And they were replaced by new pillars and a new facade. So the facade you see with Lincoln is not the same facade where he spoke. It became much bigger and elaborate. And each president, made a decision about whether to go forward with, the exterior inauguration. When Grant was inaugurated, I think it was for his second time, it was extremely cold. It was like, 16 degrees. And he went out, nevertheless, gave his inauguration outside, but he held his inaugural ball in a room in the Treasury building where it was so cold, people were wearing overcoats and the champagne froze. So kind of a famous time there. But, being the Civil War general that he was not going to take it back inside. He held it outside. And then, of course, with Reagan, it was important because by the time you get, to Trump and to Reagan and so forth, you have so many people who show up and who are in danger of having frostbite, or really some bad things can happen in situation in that sort of weather. So I think it was a wise choice to move it inside, just like as it was with President Reagan. But over time, it has been, JFK, it was about the same temperature that it is right now, 22 degrees. He went ahead with it outside. And I think the better idea is to hold it inside, and then, to not have people get injured or hurt during an inauguration.
Yeah, we're just looking at some of the arrivals yet again. Maybe we can listen to some of them here.
Jim, as we take a live look at the arrivals here inside the Capitol Rotunda, I want to ask you this, and maybe you know and maybe you don't, but we are awaiting President-elect Donald Trump to depart the Blair House and make his way here. What's the process during this waiting period? What is he doing? Is he practicing his speech? Is he just relaxing? I mean, what does he do during this downtime? Or is he busy making phone calls, as we do know that, he's set to sign, 200 or so executive orders? Can you take us perhaps inside the Blair House as we do await his arrival here?
Well, I doubt he's practiced. I bet he's read over his speech many times, and he's pretty good at reading speeches. And I think he will, he has good delivery. He knows how to give a speech. My guess is he's talking to a lot of different people and getting ready to come over. It's interesting in our history how this, presidents getting to the Capitol to be sworn in. The first inauguration was in New York at a place called Federal Hall, where Washington came all the way from Mount Vernon and rode horseback and through carriages through various cities on the way, and had all this big celebration of him coming to, to that ceremony. He gets to the ceremony. They go to give him the
city is the tourist destination. Laura Moss told me, and she's pretty middle of the road, but Laura Moss told me, she said, look, the county was developed in 1919. We had its 100-year anniversary. Vero Beach is going to come up with its 100-year anniversary from 2025. And when they incorporated or whatever in 1925, it was Vero, Florida, and they put beach in it, knowing the beach produces people. They show up. So, yeah, you have to look at this and say, all right, there needs to be a reassessment of the tourist development tax. We're not paying for it necessarily unless, we go over to Mulligan's or any of the other fine restaurants over there and we spend some money.
So with
our relatives come and use the hotels.
So with what do you think is going to ultimately end up happening with the three corners, and how does that affect that tourist taxed or the hospital district? Because there is that the same proximity? I'm not.
Well, that's going to be in the city, so that tourist development tax is going to be applied, obviously, to a lot of things that are there. There will be, the plans just came out yesterday. I've been actually reviewing them for the last few hours yesterday and some today. And ClearPath, who had that $550 million plan, and they had a theater out on the water and all this. They had this like river canoe thing. I mean, it was crazy what they had in there, and not a skateboard park. But they scaled back to about $250 million. They still have the theater. It's now on the land, and they realized, hey, whoa, we overshot the expectation. So, and what SUDA did, they're the other ones who have applied. And, that was the big battle back in the day. And there was this whole controversy of disbarring SUDA. Well, I don't want to get into that now, but they're at about 190 million, 192 million for their plan. And what they did is they're giving the same plan, but they refined it. So they guaranteed, hey, Big Blue, the way we told you we wanted to renovate it, which you guys were skeptical about, we sent designers, we sent engineers in there, and yeah, we can do this.
Where he was in Washington and walked to his inaugural. This is good for the country to see. The unity is good. The friendship shown between two men is good. Melania Trump looked a little uncomfortable, but that's a difficult role to be in. And when the two of them went in, it looked like they continued to talk. This is reminiscent of Obama and Trump speaking at Carter's funeral too. This is a time for people to begin treating each other as not just political enemies, but as, fellow Americans. If you look over time, that interaction can sometimes be very frosty. If you look at when FDR came in 1933 and Hoover lost, they rode together in an open car with the same blanket over them to the Capitol for the inauguration. And FDR chatted away and Hoover said nothing. He was not happy. Carter and Reagan were similar. I don't think Carter was particularly chatty. I think Reagan, being who Reagan was particularly chatty. When Warren Harding won after the First World War, Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. 19 months earlier, he had tried to pass what was called the Versailles Treaty, the League of Nations. It failed. And he, trying to get it passed, Wilson went out into the country to stump for it, had this severe stroke in Denver, was taken back to the White House, had another very severe stroke. And so he was very disabled at that point. And by the time, it came time for Harding to come to the White House and to go with him, they did go over together. But once they got to the Capitol, Harding kind of excused Wilson and said, I will not blame you if you don't want to come out for the ceremony itself, because he really was disabled at that point. And so Wilson was taken to his house on S Street, which is still in existence, a great museum if you're in Washington to go see. But this transition of power, this thing that Reagan talked about in 1981 as being a miracle, it really is a miracle. And it really is interesting. If you look back at Thomas Jefferson, as I told you, there was a really severe fight between Adams and Jefferson. They would later in life become friends and would write letters to each other. They both die on the same day in 1826 on July the 4th, interestingly enough. But during that time, as I said, Adams left and Jefferson went ahead and gave his magnanimous speech. So if you look at, what has happened in these transitions of power, many people call
Can we stop with the self-care weeks? Like, what if we did adult weeks instead? Think about it. Instead of laying in bed and rotting away, we literally just dedicate an entire week to tackling all of the that we just put away. Dental appointments, eye exams, finances, trips. Imagine how much smoother life would be if we just got all of that sorted in one go. And here's a simple way to make sure it all gets done too. Instead of letting all of these tasks pile up, organize them into an adult week. I use an AI tool to plan everything. So I just spend 10 minutes at the start of my day dumping at the 5,000 things on my to-do list, and it sorts everything for me, like dentist, chores, budgeting. It's like wiping your mental gutter clean. So if you're tired of letting the adult stuff slip through the cracks, give this a try. There's a link in the description.
And so you look at this and you say, this is going to be a real interesting contest, battle, whatever you want to call it. And I
just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we are continuing our coverage of Inauguration Day 2025. This is a live look right there outside the U.S. Capitol. As we have been sharing with you, arrivals continue inside the Capitol Rotunda. In fact, this is a live look right here of the Capitol Rotunda, as we have seen family members of President-elect Trump, as well as others, arriving here, getting ready to be seated. Meanwhile, we also want to share with our viewers as well that we were sharing with you the arrival of President-elect Donald Trump and Melania Trump here at the White House. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcoming them in for a tea ceremony prior to the swearing-in ceremony. They are inside the White House, media not allowed inside. And of course, one has to wonder what that conversation is going to be like. This is another vantage point there outside the White House. A very snowy ground, a very cold day, which is why in just the second time, the first time since 1985, the swearing-in ceremony will be held inside the Capitol Rotunda. And in fact, this is an aerial view right here. It keeps going in and out, so I didn't want to necessarily bring it to you full, but just a very brief look right here at the aerial view from inside the Capitol Rotunda right there. Just a bird's eye view, and you can see that folks are making their way inside. And this is a live look right here inside Capital One Arena, as of course, it is a very chilly day. So unfortunately, the hundreds of thousands of individuals who made the journey to the U.S. Capitol to watch as history unfolds, as Donald J. Trump is sworn in as the 47th president. Unfortunately, the outside ceremony not happening, but you can already see that thousands of people are packing inside Capitol Run Arena to watch this via the screens. We also know that Trump will then, after being sworn in as president, make his way inside the arena to deliver additional remarks to those as well. And once again, I do want to bring in my colleague Andrew Kraft as we continue our live coverage here. And you can see that lawmakers, Andrew, are arriving there inside Capitol Hill as, arrivals do continue. As we continue to discuss all of this, what are your thoughts as we continue to watch this unfold? Truly historic in nature right there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You're seeing the former speakers of the House there, McCarthy, Boehner, and Gingrich. So that's always interesting to see them kind of commingling together. Of course, Republican political powerhouses, all three of them really in their own right there. But I just want to go back. Our viewers were just watching that really incredible, somewhat tense scene, I think, between the Bidens and the Trumps. And you just kind of have to get into the head of Trump, into the head of Biden. These are longtime political foes. We know that they cannot stand each other. On the surface, yes, they exchanged pleasantries. They had a short conversation. They took the photo here. But the 2020 election and the 2024 election were very hard-fought contests. We know Trump did not even attend the inauguration of Joe Biden. Of course, things look a lot different this time around. And right now, as we speak, they are having tea together in the White House. And that goes to what Jim Robidault was saying, that this is what this day is about, the peaceful transition of power. You set all that aside, no matter how hard it is in your marrow and in your bones, that you might be thinking to yourself, if you're Biden or Trump or even Harris with Vance, because electoral defeats are very painful, but you put all that aside for today, one day only. And I think that's what Jim was alluding to. That's what this country is all about. That's what makes us unique. He called it, and many have called it, a miracle, so to speak. So I just wanted to note that there. Of course, we know President-elect Trump's relationship with former House Speaker McCarthy. You'll remember, Stephanie, in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, mere days, if not weeks afterward, Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago. And that was really seen as a game-changing moment. That was seen as a moment that was rehabilitating Trump's image in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, that there were going to be fellow Republicans who will still stand by him and forgive him for January 6th. So I thought that was interesting. McCarthy, of course, we know how that unfolded for him. He lost the gavel. His own fellow Republicans, 8 of them, ousting him from the speakership now a little bit over a year ago. And so he's on hand. There's going to be a lot of people on hand in the Capitol Rotunda. But that's what I'm thinking of right now. And just for our viewers, to give them up to speed on what's happening live right now, they are, the Bidens and the Trumps, having tea together at the White House before they ride together to the Capitol, to the Rotunda for the swearing in.
You know, and we're taking a live look, Andrew, of the White House right there as the tea ceremony is underway. And you know, it's always so interesting as we see, you know, the political rivalry, you know, front and center, you know, especially during the election cycle. And, you know, the ability for some, perhaps not all, but some of these politicians to then set that rivalry, that contentiousness aside, you know, and seeing beyond perhaps the political party and seeing the person instead, you know, as we take a look at the political landscape, you know, what do you make of that? Because we were seeing President-elect Trump and former President Barack Obama speaking with one another quite cordially at the funeral service of former President Jimmy Carter. Of course, you know, not everyone is able to, you know, put those politics aside after leaving office, after handing the baton, so to speak, you know, but one has to wonder what the conversation is like now inside the White House, as in just hours, President Biden, no longer president, and President-elect Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, and for the second time.
Right. I mean, history is contingent. Elections matter. I'm sure you have. I know I have lost contests in my personal life, minor, large, grand, small, and it's tough and it hurts. But that's what this day is about. You put those aside. You let bygones be bygones for at least a couple hours.
Absolutely. And that apparently is what they are going to do. And, you know, just to give our viewers just another look right here, I did want to share this live look right here as well, as we are taking a look outside the Capitol Hill right there, outside the Capitol building. You can see buses lining up, most likely to bring in individuals into the Capitol Rotunda. And there is the aerial view. Unfortunately, it does go in and out, as you know, we do get these live streams from time to time, but I did want to share that with you as we continue this live look right here. You know, Andrew, as we continue to take a look at this, you know, it is so interesting to see who is in attendance, who is being joined, and you can see people from really both parties attending, as well as you know, staunch supporters. In fact, you can see some of these. Marco Rubio right there, Senator Marco Rubio, likely no longer to be that, obviously, as we have heard that Governor DeSantis has named his successor. But really the who's who right there in terms of cabinet selections.
Yeah, you're seeing all of the Trump cabinet selections get off that charter bus right there, and we can name them. We know, Stephanie, the confirmation hearings are literally happening as we speak. We saw a lot of that last week. It's going to pick up this week as well. These are the people Trump has chosen to help him lead and plan the agenda for the next 4 years. And so you see them all there, get off that charter bus. Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, and others there.
Absolutely. And I did also want to share this with our viewers, and actually we see some of the outgoing members as well, perhaps, as everyone is seated right here. So, we are awaiting the arrival of both President-elect Donald Trump and President Biden. They, of course, are having their pre-inauguration, ceremony as we continue to see, individuals trickle, but also, as we take a live look right here, this is historic in nature, because this is atypical, Andrew. This is not something that we traditionally see every 4 years with the swearing-in ceremony. I did want to share this with our viewers as well. As you can see, a live look there, a larger, more extensive view of the Capitol building right there, where everyone is congregating. And of course, as we have been sharing and talking about, there, of course, is a reason why, when it comes to the fact that the mall is completely empty. No one is in attendance. No one is allowed to congregate there because of the frigid weather. And so I did want to share that with our viewers as well. And a beautiful live look right here. From the rooftop, I should say, of the Washington Monument, and this really giving us a clearer picture. We see the American flag there, waving in the wind, and the wind chill making it even feel like single digits right here as we continue to await the arrival of President-elect Trump and, of course, President Biden.
Yeah, that was a really cool shot there atop the White House. To your point, the flag's still at half staff. If we have the inside of the rotunda, we can point out some of the people that are there. I think that would be helpful for some people watching, because to your point, Stephanie, it is going to be a who's who of the federal government. It's going to be a who's who of Washington. But world leaders are also in attendance. I believe I saw the Argentinian president, Javier Milei, and other former world leaders as well. So we'll do our best pointing out these individuals, pointing out these members of Congress, former members of Congress, incoming and outgoing members of both administrations here. That's always, to your point, interesting to see who's there and who's not, who's seated next to who and who's standing maybe. But we're finally getting a live picture inside of the rotunda. We were wondering how this was all going to look because they had to pull it together so quickly. And there you see more of these individuals walking into Congress there. And if I recognize anyone, I will definitely point them out here. Looks like Tulsi Gabbard there, Vivek Ramaswamy, other members of the incoming Trump cabinet, and some of the staffers who will work in the second Trump White House. Upon confirmation, of course, there's Elon Musk.
And
Maybe
Andrew,
if we can see if we can hear some of the natural sound, that's always interesting too.
It is, and we can see the inside of the rotunda as this, they continue to, weave through shots right here. But, as we take a moment to pause, I do want to bring in Rebecca Castor with Fox News as well as we continue our live coverage right here. And Rebecca, we're taking a live look from inside the Capitol Rotunda as we see lawmakers, officials, and really the who's who of Washington and the business industry, arrive ahead of this swearing-in ceremony. We see the Capitol building right there behind you as we are awaiting the arrival of President-elect Donald Trump. Security, of course, top of mind. Thousands of law enforcement officers spreading out across Washington, D.C. to make sure that what happens is as seamless as possible, a hustle and bustle, if you will, ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. So, can you set the scene for us right now?
Hey, Stephanie, good morning. So, speaking with other reporters on our Fox team who have covered inaugurations here in DC in the past, they're saying that this security feels a lot more ramped up than previous inaugurations. So, even though things have moved indoors, security is still red hot. They have the Capitol building pretty much locked down like a fortress. There are miles and miles of fencing all around the Capitol building, as well as some of the nearby streets. It's really hard to travel by car here in downtown DC right now. People are saying that they've been having to walk for several miles to get to some of these locations. But yesterday, thousands of police officers from across the country arrived here in D.C. They were sworn in by the local police chief, and they have been given police powers to help out the D.C. Metro Police as well as the Capitol Police as well. They're expecting at least 19 different protests to possibly happen around the district today, so we're going to be monitoring that. We know that they're going to have drones out, also monitoring events from the sky. So if anybody is here watching locally and they see drones in the air, that is likely what they are doing, monitoring some of these events. A lot of things are going to look different today than they have in the past now that this inauguration is moving inside the Capitol. It's been 40 years since a president was sworn in inside the Capitol Rotunda. Those lawmakers that are entering now to the Capitol Rotunda, that's an exclusive invitation. We're told only about 600 people are going to be able to sit inside the Capitol to be able to watch the swearing in happen in person. There's going to be an overflow room as well. So I think there was some discussion on Capitol Hill, lawmakers lobbying to try to get the best seat in the House and to actually be there in person as opposed to that overflow room. But it's just not going to be the same event as if we would have seen Donald Trump outside on the west front of the Capitol taking the oath of office. Of course, all of these changes, primary reason is the weather. This morning, the feels like temperature was about 12 degrees. The sun is up, so it's warmed up a bit now. It feels a little bit more comfortable outside, but that decision was made with the safety in mind of the hundreds of thousands of people from all over the country who traveled to D.C. and we're going to congregate on the National Mall. They've actually shut that down. People that are still here are not able to even be around the National Mall today. They've locked it down because the police just don't want people gathering because of just the safety conditions out here in the weather.
All right, Rebecca, we do appreciate you sharing that with us as we continue to follow the very latest. And we did want to once again share this live look outside the Capitol Rotunda. We saw Jeff Bezos, of course, founder, CEO of Amazon, along with his fiancee, Lauren Sanchez. And I did want to raise the audio to see what we can hear as the arrivals continue at the U.S. Capitol ahead of the swearing in ceremony. And we see former President Bill Clinton along with Hillary Rodham Clinton also in attendance right there, just posing for pictures. And we do know that, all of the living presidents will be in attendance, as well as the former first ladies, everyone except for Michelle Obama, who will not be attending, not giving any particular reason why that is. She also did not attend former President Jimmy Carter's funeral as well. As we continue truly to see the who's who, we do hear some of the music right here, so we pause on the commentary and allow you to listen in. And there we have Rudy Giuliani, the former attorney for President-elect Donald Trump, of course, the former mayor there of New York City, as Rudy Giuliani now making his way inside ahead of the swearing-in ceremony for President-elect Donald Trump. We continue to see this, but I do want to pivot now because we do see here the departure there at the White House, as we do see Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff and soon to be First Lady Vice President there. And we are waiting in. I'm going to raise the audio as we are expecting President Biden and President-elect Donald J. Trump to be departing as well momentarily.
I had fallen victim to a scam incident. A victim of a Bitcoin investment scam.
I fell victim to a trading scam called FX
pseudo
Hey, John, are you there?
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. We have been live now for 3 hours, just restreaming some activities going
Yep.
on in DC, and we're going to restart the stream here in a few minutes. But let's bring on Joanne. Hey, Joanne, you're muted.
Hi, guys. Happy Inauguration Day.
Happy Inauguration Day. Let's see what happened here. There we go. I'm going to mute that, but I'm going to let it go. Yeah, so I was just saying that we are going to restart this stream here in a few minutes, and we have 35 people viewing right now, and it seems to be mostly on X, which is pretty good. So it's pretty interesting. Do you remember an inauguration as much of a spectacle as this one so far, or as important or iconic, I should say?
Well, you have to compare it. Obviously, this is the whole part of the operation, the 4-year pause. You have to compare 4 years ago compared to today. So, like, you look at the inauguration 4 years ago, there was nobody at the Capitol. It was all secured off. It was all a big goofy show. Lady Gaga was there. All the ex-presidents were all there. Now you look at it now, and it's a whole different animal. You got Biden pardoning the J6 committee. You got him pardoning Fauci and Milley. So at the very last minute of the last second of his term, so it's all part of the show. So to get people upset about what's happening, but also to see like, wow, this is a whole different animal compared to anything we've ever seen before. And I think it's just about to get started. I think the fireworks are about to explode here soon.
Yeah, I think those fireworks started yesterday, but we've been waiting a long 4 years. So this is the most historic inauguration that we have seen in our lifetime because of the chronology of events that have followed the election from 2015 all the way to this election. And we all know that Trump should have won the 2020 election. So this is absolutely historic. And we have hostages that we're all waiting to see released. And the thing about that as well is, will they get